I've been married to cheating for 22 years now, and we've been together for 26. When we first met, everything was perfect. We were young, in love, and life was full of possibilities. But over the years, things have changed, and not for the better. Jill's always been strong-willed, which I admired at first. She knew what she wanted, and wasn't afraid to go after it. But somewhere along the way, that strength turned into something else. Now it feels like every day it is a battle. She's constantly criticizing me, pointing out my flaws for the smallest things. It's like nothing I do is ever good enough for her. At first, I tried to brush it off. I told myself she was just stressed. Work is tough, and she's dealing with a lot. But the excuses started to wear thin. The harsh words and constant nitpicking began to take a toll on me. I found myself dreading coming home, knowing that another argument was just around the corner. I tried to talk to her about it, hoping we could work things out. But every time I brought it up, it turned into another fight. She'd accuse me of being too sensitive, or of not being able to handle a strong woman. But it's not about that. I love strong women. I loved her for her strength. But there's a difference between being strong and being unkind. I missed the Jill I fell in love with, the one who laughed with me, who supported me, who made me feel like I could conquer the world. Now I just feel like I'm constantly walking on eggshells, waiting for the next explosion. I've thought about leaving more times than I can count, but it's not that simple. We've built a life together. We have a home, memories, shared dreams, and despite everything, I still love her. I remember the good times, and it breaks my heart to think of throwing it all away. But how much more can I take? Every day, I feel myself getting closer to the edge, closer to the point where I just can't do it anymore. I don't want to give up on us, but I don't know how to fix it either. I wish she could see what she's doing to me, to us. I wish she could remember the love we once had and find a way back to it. But right now, that feels like a distant dream, and I'm left wondering how much longer I can hold on. Maybe it's time for a change. Maybe it's time to put myself first for once, because as much as I love Jill, I can't keep living like this. I deserve to be happy too. I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to talk to her about how I was feeling, hoping against hope that she would understand. As I approached her, I could already feel the tension building. "Jill, can we talk for a minute?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She sighed heavily, barely glancing up from her phone. "What is it now, Connor?" "I'm busy." "I know, but I really need to talk to you about something that's been bothering me," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "Oh great, here we go again," she said with a scoff. "What did I do this time?" "It's not about what you did," I began, choosing my words carefully. "It's about how you speak to me. Lately, it feels like you're constantly criticizing me, and it's really wearing me down." "Are you serious?" she snapped, her eyes narrowing. "You're being overly sensitive again. You need to toughen up. Life isn't all sunshine and rainbows." "It's not about being sensitive," I try to explain. "It's about feeling respected and valued. I feel like nothing I do is ever good enough for you." She rolled her eyes. "Oh please, you're just looking for something to complain about. Maybe if you actually did something right for a change, I wouldn't have to criticize you all the time." Her words hit me hard, like a punch to the gut. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Jill, I'm serious. This constant criticism is making me miserable. I miss the way we used to be, when we could talk to each other without all this negativity." She laughed bitterly. "Well, maybe if you weren't so unproductive, we wouldn't have this problem. Maybe the issue isn't me. Maybe it's you." I felt a lump forming in my throat. "I'm trying, Jill. I'm really trying. But I can't keep doing this if things don't change. We need to work on this together." "Work on what?" She snapped. "You're the one with the problem, not me. I'm not going to change just because you were too weak to handle a little criticism." I stood there, speechless, feeling the last bit of hope draining away. It was clear she wasn't willing to see my side of things. I didn't know what to do next. But one thing was certain. I couldn't keep living like this. A few days later, I stumbled upon something that shattered what little hope I had left. I found out that Jill was being unfaithful with my longtime rival from high school, Ron. The betrayal cut deep, much deeper than I ever thought possible. I discovered the evidence by accident while cleaning up the living room. Jill's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Normally, I wouldn't invade her privacy, but curiosity got the better of me. The message preview on the screen was from Ron, and it read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Love you." My heart sank. I scrolled through their messages, each one more incriminating than the last. Pictures, conversations, plans for secret meetups. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Jill had been betraying me, and with Ron of all people. I felt a mix of rage and devastation. How could she do this to me? How could she betray our marriage and everything we had built together, especially with Ron, the person who had tormented me throughout high school? It felt like a cruel joke. That night, I confronted her. She didn't even bother to deny it. She just looked at me with a cold, indifferent expression and said, "Well, now you know." The anger boiled over. "How long has this been going on, Jill? How long have you been sneaking around behind my back?" She shrugged, seemingly unfazed by my pain. "A few months, maybe longer. Does it really matter?" "Of course it matters," I shouted, tears welling up in my eyes. "You betrayed me. You destroyed our marriage." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, stop being so dramatic, Connor. You were never enough for me. Ron actually makes me feel alive." Her words stung, but they also gave me a strange sense of clarity. This was it, the final straw. There was no saving our marriage. Jill had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. "I'm done," I said quietly, my voice trembling. "I'm done with this marriage. I'm done with you." She just stared at me, expressionless. "Fine. Whatever. Do what you have to do." The next morning, I contacted a lawyer and started the divorce proceedings. It hurt, and it was going to be a long, painful process, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I deserved better than this. I deserved to be happy. As I packed my things and prepared to leave, I felt a strange sense of relief. This was the end of a painful chapter, but it was also the beginning of a new one. For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future. I didn't know what it would bring, but I knew I had the strength to face it. Discovering Jill's betrayal was the final blow. I had no choice but to start divorce proceedings, but I wasn't going to let her walk away easily. Luckily, we had a prenuptial agreement in place that would protect my assets and ensure I wouldn't have to pay alimony. As the divorce process unfolded, I fought tooth and nail to ensure that the prenup was honored. It wasn't just about the money. It was about standing up for myself after all the years of emotional hardship, and now this betrayal. My lawyer was relentless, and we gathered every piece of evidence needed to prove Jill's infidelity. Jill was predictably furious when she realized she wouldn't be getting any of my assets or alimony. She had expected to walk away with a significant portion of our wealth, but the prenup and the evidence of her actions left her with nothing. One evening, as we were finalizing the details, she confronted me in the courtroom, her eyes blazing with anger. "You really think you've won, don't you?" she spat. I looked at her, feeling a mix of sadness and resolve. "This isn't about winning, Jill. It's about what's fair. You betrayed me, and now you have to face the consequences," I said firmly. She sneered, but there was a glimmer of resignation in her eyes. "Fine. Keep your money, Connor. I don't need it. Ron and I will be just fine without you." Hearing her mention Ron so casually, as if our years together meant nothing, still hurt. But I stood firm. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Jill." The divorce was finalized soon after, and I kept everything I had worked so hard for. Jill, despite her initial anger, seemed almost relieved to be rid of me. Without the burden of legal battles, she wasted no time moving on, making plans to marry Ron. During all this, my daughter Shayna walked a tightrope between both her parents. However, she made her feelings clear to her mother when the details of the affair with Ron came out. As I watched Jill pack up the last of her things, I felt a strange sense of closure. The woman I had loved for so long was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. But that was okay. I was ready to move forward and rebuild my life without the constant negativity and betrayal. Jill's departure was both a loss and a liberation. There were times I felt happy that she was leaving my life. Had she not cheated, I might have filed for divorce myself. I might have lost more than what I lost now. Good riddance, I must say. Sometimes someone wants to take something from you, not realizing you were ready to get rid of it anyway. Well, Ron just did that for me. If she becomes even half the person she was during our marriage, Ron is going to have a really tough time. For me, it was time to start anew and find happiness on my own terms. Life moved on, and I moved ahead. A few months later, they say the sense of smell is the strongest of the five senses. It can bring back memories, even from childhood. The fragrance I smelled when I opened my mailbox wasn't from my childhood, but I recognized it immediately. It brought back memories and turned my mood foul. The scent was Christian Dior's Dune, my ex-wife's favorite for most of our marriage. I knew why I was smelling it. She must have sent me an invitation to her upcoming wedding. What a surprise, as if I wanted to see her joining her new partner in marriage. I rifled through the mail, setting aside bills and junk, until I saw it. Of course, it was an ornate envelope with my name and address, hand-calligraphed in deep purple ink, her favorite color. Royalty, she used to say when anyone asked about it. Royalty. She was no closer to royalty than my dog, which she took in the divorce. Am I bitter? Hell yes, I am. She cheated on me with my lifelong rival, and took my dog. Taking the dog was the crueler of the two. I wouldn't have opened the invitation, except that I wanted to know when the wedding was so I could conveniently be out of town. July 23rd at 3 p.m., I was sure I could find somewhere else to be. I looked at the name of the place where the ceremony was going to be held. I couldn't believe it. She was actually getting remarried in a church, not just any church, but the most prestigious and pompous church in the city. How could she even think of getting married there after everything that happened? But her new fiancé was wealthy, so I guess only the best for her. I ceremoniously threw the invitation into the wastebasket. I had been in a great mood before I came home. Now my mood soured. It had been a good day at work. One of the newer staff members, Sabrina, had stopped by my cubicle, and we flirted a little, or at least I hoped she was flirting, and not just being nice. This last year and a half had been tough, but her attention really boosted my ego and lifted my spirits. I thought about my ex-wife. We had had 26 years together, 23 as husband and wife. I grabbed a beer out of the fridge, turned on the TV, and plopped down on the couch. I'm not sure how long I sat there, but it must have been a while. When I went to take the last swig of beer from the bottle, it was warm. I looked at the bottle and was contemplating grabbing another one when my phone rang. It was my daughter, Shayna. "Hello, Pooh Bear," I said. "Hey, Dad. How are you doing?" "Well, I was doing great until I got home and checked the mail." "So you must have gotten the invitation today, too," she stated. "Yeah, can you believe it?" "Sorry, Dad. I told her she shouldn't send you one. But she insisted, saying, 'He's got to get over it. He can come to the wedding if for no other reason than to see his daughter as a bridesmaid.' Well, I have no intention of going. I already threw the invitation into the trash where it belongs." "Dad, would you reconsider?" "Honey, I'm planning on being out of town that weekend," I declared. "Dad, I really want you to be there. They'll need you there for support." "You know, I don't really want to be in the wedding," she said, but she made me feel guilty. She wanted me to be the maid of honor, but I told her no way. "Shayna, you don't need my support. Brent will be there to support you." "Dad, what are you going to do next year when Brent and I get married? Are you going to avoid that wedding too?" "Of course not, Pooh Bear. I can't wait to walk you down the aisle and give you away. So, you'll have to be in the same church with them next year. Can't you be the better man and come to this one?" "I don't think I am the better man, honey," I said to her. "Well, think about it, Dad. I really want you to be there with me." "I'll think about it," I told her. I would have to really consider it. I didn't think I could be the better man and put this behind me. Jill and I were supposed to be married for life. I guess she wanted to trade up rather than stick with the old model. As I sat there reflecting, I decided to try something that had helped me a number of times throughout my life. When I was younger, I was instructed to write down my problems. Putting my thoughts on paper helped me deal with each concern instead of the whole issue. As I wrote, I realized that the fact Ron, her new fiancé, had been my rival since junior high made the betrayal even worse. I knew I wouldn't be able to confront him face to face about how I felt, so I decided to write it down. I had no intention of giving it to him, but it would help me get it off my chest. "Ronald, I guess the best man has won. Jill has chosen to be with you for the rest of her life. Ever since junior high, we've been in competition. You truly were my arch-rival. Even in high school, we were competing. Jill had been someone we both wanted, but she chose you in the end. Later, while you were at college, she chose me. But I guess even after all these years, you couldn't stand that Jill had married me. One would think you would have moved on. But no, you had to pursue her just because she was mine. I'm upset with you, but I'm really upset with my ex-wife. The fact that she succumbed to your advances showed me that even after 26 years, I didn't really know her. When we first started dating, we would share all of our hopes, dreams, and fears for hours on end. By the end of our marriage, we hardly talked. Well, I didn't talk much. She did all the talking. I guess I should have been listening more. Maybe I would have heard the alarms warning me that she was leaving me. I keep thinking of all the things about Jill that I used to love. Now you will be the one to experience all that makes her who she is. You'll get to wake up next to her and see her in the morning. You'll be the only one to ever see her without makeup, hair a mess, and the morning breath. She'll immediately go to the bathroom to brush her hair and teeth, as well as put on layers of makeup. You may want to get into the bathroom before her, or else you'll be waiting a while. After I had written those words, I set the pages down and decided to go out to the bar to take my mind off my problems. I'm a little ashamed to admit that I had to get an Uber to take me home because I was too inebriated to drive. The next day was Saturday, so I slept off my hangover. In fact, I didn't get out of bed until 2:00 p.m. I just couldn't find a reason to get up before then. The smell of sweat finally motivated me to rise, if for no other reason than to take a shower and grab a bite to eat. I felt better after my shower, so I decided to grab a burger at the pub. I had to Uber back to get my car anyway. The burger helped, along with a little hair of the dog that bit me. That next week, Sabrina noticed I was still down and asked me what was wrong. I told her about my issues with Jill. She hadn't worked there when all my trouble started, so she didn't know the whole story. "Connor," she said, "let's go grab a bite to eat after work. I hate seeing you so glum." I'd hate to have my sour mood rub off on such a happy person. I told her, "Nonsense. Maybe I'm just what you need to get you out of your funk." There it was, her flirting again. Or was it totally innocent? I had been out of the game for so long I couldn't be sure of anything. Dinner was nice. We sat and talked. She asked me about what had happened with Jill, and it was clear from my emotional responses that I still harbored a lot of resentment for my ex and her new partner. I apologized for going on about my issues and asked her about her relationships. She told me about her marriage to someone who struggled with alcohol, and then a long-term relationship of 6 years with a guy who decided he didn't want to ever get married. She struggled with that. Did he not love her? Did he want to play the field? She wanted to have children but couldn't see having them without being married. She needed commitment and assurance that he was going to be there for the long haul. As we ate, we talked, taking turns discussing all kinds of topics. It was obvious to me that we had a lot in common, politics, religion, family values, vacations, and the future. At the end of our meal, we made our way out to the parking lot, and then, without notice, she stepped right up to me and gave me a hug. I was stunned and thought to myself, who is this young woman that could show such concern for me? As she walked toward her car, I just looked at her. She had to be at least 10 years younger than me, a short, petite Latina woman who always seemed to have a smile on her face. I really wanted to learn more of her story. We would have to do this again soon. Sabrina had certainly changed my mood. As I drove to my apartment, I was smiling and singing along with the radio to some country song that I had heard many times before. When I walked into my living room, I saw the letter I had started. My smile faded, but my mood was definitely better than when I had started writing the letter. Having a young woman care enough to try to cheer me up definitely helped me gain a new perspective on life. I sat down, picked up the paper, and thought about my ex-wife. Our relationship wasn't perfect. No one's is. Just ask any couple that has been married for any length of time. There are things that your partner does that, if you focused on them, could drive you crazy. You learn to ignore those things, or at least learn to live with them. That made me think about dinner with Sabrina. I compared her to Jill and realized something was different. Then it dawned on me. It was the sound of Jill's fork touching her plate. My ex had a habit of tapping her fork on the plate 3 times before taking a bite. I had asked her about it once. She didn't even consciously know she was doing it. When she took a moment to think about it, she said it was to ensure all the food was securely on her fork so she wouldn't spill it on her blouse. I guess that was a good reason, and I learned to live with it. I even learned to ignore it. One thing I do know, I won't miss eating with her. I put pen to paper and started writing again. When we were first married, I found it cute, the way she always touched her fork 3 times to her plate before she ate. I have to admit, though, it did really annoy me toward the end. Hearing that clink, clink, clink throughout our meals. Even when we were out for dinner, there it was again. Clink, clink, clink. The next week at work, Sabrina let me know that she enjoyed the time we had spent together. Being polite, I said, "So did I. We'll have to do that again." "When?" she asked. It surprised me a bit. How about Friday, if you don't already have plans?" "Nope. I'm free for you," she said, smiling. There it was again. Was it flirting, or just an innocent comment? That night, when I walked through the door of my apartment, I was whistling a tune. I saw the letter on the coffee table and thought to myself, not tonight. I didn't even want to think of my ex. Friday came, and we found ourselves enjoying another meal together. I was nervous. It had been so long since I had gone on a date, and I didn't know what to expect. I did know that this woman in front of me was pleasant to be around and easy to talk to. We finished our meal and then just drove around. I know I was nervous, and maybe she was too, but when there was silence in the car, neither of us felt the need to fill it with small talk. I appreciated that. We were comfortable just sitting together in the car. At the end of the night, I brought her back to her condo. We talked for a little while. Then she went inside. As I walked into my apartment and saw the letter still sitting on my coffee table, I just grinned to myself. A week went by, and on Saturday afternoon, Shayna called me again. "Dad, did you send back your RSVP to Mom?" she asked. "No, honey. I told you, I threw the invitation in the trash where it belonged." "Dad, I really wish you would go. For me," she urged. "Why do you want me to go so badly, Shayna? Do you think I want to see that guy smirking at me while he marries your mom?" "Dad, I know you two don't get along, and I get it. But if you don't go, it will just reinforce in his mind that he has won." "Honey, I don't know. I don't think your mother really wants me there anyway. I think he probably put her up to sending the invitation." "Dad, please think about it," she said. "I will, honey, but don't get your hopes up." We finished our phone call, and I felt a little depressed. Why couldn't Shayna understand how I felt? I needed to put a smile on my face, so I decided to call Sabrina. "Hey, Sabrina. How are you? I was just thinking about you and wondering if you had plans today." "Well, that makes me feel good that you're thinking about me. I don't have anything planned. Do you have something in mind?" "I want to do a road trip. Are you up for it?" "Where to?" she asked. "Let's just hop in my car and see where it takes us." "Okay. I'm all yours," she replied. As soon as I said it, I hoped she didn't take that too seriously. I didn't want to scare her by making her think I was moving too fast. We ended up driving through the countryside, taking in the beautiful scenery. We traveled some high mountain roads where the views were breathtaking. We stopped at a scenic overlook and walked up to get the best view. The wind was a little chilly, so I put my arm around her to share my warmth. She looked up at me, and I looked down into her eyes and kissed her. It wasn't a long kiss, but it said, "I like you." It was the first time we kissed, and I had hesitated to do anything. I didn't want to scare this lovely woman away, and it had been almost 3 decades since I had kissed anyone other than my ex. She smiled and hugged me back. That was a good sign. We walked arm in arm. Over the last few weeks, we had talked about our past relationships. She had married in her early 20s to someone who struggled with alcohol and had become abusive. Luckily, she said, I saw early on that he wouldn't give up drinking. So I made a conscious decision not to have any children with him. I didn't want to bring them up with an abusive father. We discussed my divorce again. She couldn't believe that after all those years together, my ex decided that I wasn't good enough or wealthy enough. We walked along and I talked about my daughter. When I mentioned that she was 22, Sabrina said, "Oh, she's 10 years younger than I am." Sabrina is 32. I thought to myself, what am I doing? I'm 16 years older than she is. So I asked her, "Sabrina, I don't know if you realize it, but I'm 48 years old. Why would you want to hang out with someone like me?" She looked at me and gave me a sharp look. Then she said, "Connor, if you can't see that I like you, and that your age means nothing to me, then maybe I don't know you at all. Maybe you should find someone who is more your age." She made air quotes, emphasizing her point. I looked at her. She had moved a bit away from me. I blew it. I said to myself as I sat down on a rock bench nearby, "Why am I so stupid? I have a good thing going with someone who makes me happy, and I have to go and say something to screw it up." I looked over at her. She was turned away, but I could tell she was upset. I got up and approached her, hesitantly placing my hands on her shoulders and leaning gently against her back. "I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. I guess I just can't believe someone like you would want to spend time with me. I'm not movie star handsome. Far from it. I'm barely average." She turned her head slightly, and I could see the tears still streaming down her face. "Sabrina, I know it's early in our relationship, but I'm developing strong feelings for you. I guess I was just trying to guard against getting my heart broken again." She turned around and looked at me. "You don't think I'm scared?" My ex-husband was difficult to deal with. He wasn't like that before I married him. At least I didn't see it then. I was also in a relationship with a guy who wouldn't commit. I think you're different, and I thought we were creating something special. I'm not into casual relationships. Having a relationship with someone I like and care for is what I've been searching for. I thought I found that with you. But if our age difference is all you can think about, then maybe we shouldn't even be friends." I looked at her. The little makeup she wore was smudged, but to me, she was the most beautiful woman in the world. I gently pulled her to my chest, and after a light hug, I pulled away a little. That's when I kissed her again, this time with more feeling. She soon reciprocated, and we stood there embracing with the sun shining down upon us. We must have been there for quite a while, because when we finally stopped, I noticed some storm clouds rolling in. I looked at Sabrina and said, "Those clouds look kind of ominous. We better head back. In fact, we should skip the scenic route and take the highway." She looked at me and asked, Can I interest you in a home-cooked, authentic Mexican dinner when we get back? That sounds great, but only if you let me help. Well, I've never had anyone in my kitchen before, but if you're willing, I'm willing to take the chance. I was glad, and a bit surprised, that neither of her two past relationships had helped her in the kitchen. Was that a cultural thing? I wondered. On the trip back, I noticed something else about Sabrina that was different from Jill, and it was something good that made me smile. I would have to include this in my letter to the whole. Dinner was great, and although I think she felt a little awkward with me helping out, we soon prepped like a well-oiled machine. To say the food tasted great would be an understatement. Authentic was definitely better than the so-called authentic food you buy in the grocery store or even at restaurants. She told me that the recipes and prep had been handed down from grandmother to granddaughter for generations. That amazed me. I couldn't think of anything my ancestors had passed down, except maybe my genes. We ended the night on the couch, sharing more hugs and kisses. It felt so good to have someone close to me. We didn't take it any further, though. I think we were both still a bit hesitant, and I didn't want to rush things. I wanted our relationship to grow. That night, when I got home, I went right to the letter I had started. Initially, I wasn't sure if I would send it. I just needed to get things off my chest. Now, I still wasn't sure, but I was leaning toward sending it. The letter had been therapeutic, allowing me to release some anger, so I kept it on the coffee table to write my thoughts down when I found I had something to say. Thinking back to when Jill and I were first married, young and in love, we had just started our life together along with our new careers. Money was a little tight, so our honeymoon wasn't to exotic locations, but rather a drive to the Poconos in Pennsylvania. We took turns driving the 6 hours. When you're newly married, you don't let little things bother you. It was, however, the first time I noticed that Jill didn't like using cruise control. That wouldn't be a big problem except that she fluctuated 2 to 3 miles per hour every 20 to 30 seconds. I actually got a bit queasy. After we stopped for lunch, I told Jill I would drive the rest of the trip. So from then on long trips, I would drive. I set the letter down, realizing that driving long distances wouldn't be a problem for me in the future. I needed to write something else down to get it off my chest. When Jill and I had gotten married, it had started out great, and I needed to express this to the whole. Our honeymoon was wonderful. Literally no boundaries. Early in our marriage, we tried everything together, exploring all aspects of our relationship. However, for the last 10 years, it had been strictly routine, nothing adventurous. The intimacy was so minimal that I hadn't felt any excitement in years. Maybe she is more open with you. I hope you experience more than I did in recent years. Initially, I thought it might be due to menopause, but maybe she just became bored with me, which is why she started seeing you. We're all getting older, and it's hard to combat that middle-aged spread. Gravity has taken its toll, and it shows. There were times I couldn't differentiate between her belly and her chest because they were so close together. As they say, she became very down to earth. Despite all of that, I hoped I would be with her for the long haul. You, however, probably have every day of those 30-plus years to grow old together. Yes, the best man has won. Enjoy your prize. Sincerely, your nemesis, Connor Davidson. I finished the letter, realizing I could write pages about the little things that got on my nerves, things I had learned to live with. However, I was done looking back and ready to focus on my future with Sabrina. Early the next morning, I called Sabrina. "Well, hello. Do you miss me already?" she asked. "Yes, I do," I replied with a smile. "I was wondering if you had plans for the long 4th of July weekend. It's 2 weeks away, but I wanted to do something special." "No. What do you have in mind?" "Well, I don't want to sound like I'm rushing our relationship, but would you like to go away for a few days? I thought we could go down to Virginia Beach." Not wanting to put pressure on her, I quickly added, "We can get 2 hotel rooms. I don't want to make you uncomfortable." She surprised me with her response. "I won't feel uncomfortable, but I am concerned that you may not be ready. Your divorce still seems a little raw for you." "Oh, I'm ready," I assured her. I know I was depressed for a while there. As you know, I had just received the invitation to my ex's wedding ceremony, which brought up a lot of resentment I was still harboring. Thankfully, you've helped me turn that around. After yesterday, I thought you might be ready to move forward. That's true. Yesterday was great. These past weeks, I was afraid I might be moving too fast. It's been years, and I don't enter relationships lightly. Nor do I, but you're someone I feel very comfortable with, and I know you're a good person. Feeling a bit daring, I said, "Well, I am good even when I'm bad," trying to inject a bit of humor into the moment. She laughed. "I'll have to keep my eye on you then." I really enjoyed our banter. It showed me that we had moved past the "I'm on my best behavior" stage of our relationship. We made plans to meet for lunch, and I hung up the phone with a huge smile on my face. I immediately went online and booked one room with 2 queen beds, one for sleeping and one for relaxing. The next week, Shayna called again. "Dad, Mom says you're not coming to her wedding. She hasn't gotten your RSVP yet." "Dad, I really wish you would go for me," she pleaded. "Shayna, honey, what would I need to be there for? It isn't your wedding. I want to dance with my father. How could I get out of this without disappointing my daughter? Honey, I'll be able to dance with you next year when you get married. What's it going to hurt for you to come for a few hours? I feel like everyone would be looking at me with pity. There's the ex-husband she left to marry this guy. I can't believe he's here." "Oh, Dad, they would not." "I think they would, dear. So bring a date then. Show them you've moved on." "We'll see," I replied. "Dad, the wedding is about a month away. Please," she pleaded. "Well, that's the best I can do right now." We changed the subject and talked about other things in her life. She sure was a busy girl, burning the candle at both ends. Later in the week, Sabrina stopped by my apartment with Chinese food. Surprise. I thought I'd spend the evening with my favorite guy. Of course, I invited her in. She set the food on the table and asked, "Do you want to eat out of the containers, or should we use plates?" I liked that she was down to earth and willing to eat out of takeout containers. Not wanting to sound uncivilized, though, I said, "I'm sure I've got at least 2 clean plates around here somewhere. Let's sit at the table to eat." "I'm okay either way," she said. I grabbed the plates and silverware, and we sat down to eat and talk. While we were eating, she slipped her shoes off and started playfully rubbing her foot up and down my leg. I looked at her and joked, "It seems the Kung Pao chicken isn't the only thing that's hot tonight." She just looked at me with a fake innocent expression and said, "I don't know what you're talking about." I smiled as she kept rubbing my leg with her foot. After dinner, we went into the living room and sat on the couch, focusing on each other. As we started to kiss, she pulled away and said, "I have to visit the bathroom, but don't you forget where we left off." Wow, what a woman. She wasn't gone for long, but while she was in the bathroom, I went into the kitchen. I was just about to pour us a couple of glasses of wine when I asked, "White or red?" "I'd rather have a bottle of beer," was her reply. Wow, what a woman. I grabbed a couple of beers and headed back into the living room. As I rounded the corner, I stopped. She was intently reading my letter to the Ahole. She looked up at me with a guilty expression and said, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have just started reading your stuff. I feel terrible." How could I be mad at that gorgeous face when it was obvious she was truly sorry? Plus, she felt comfortable enough around me to pick it up in the first place. It had been sitting there on the table where I left it. Let me explain." "You don't have to," she said. "I shouldn't have been so nosy. Sabrina, it's okay that you read it. I wrote it to help get things off my chest. It's written to the Ahole that is marrying my ex-wife. I started writing it when I got the invitation. It's cheaper than therapy. I just think of things from time to time, and add to the letter. I probably won't send it, but it helps me to think that I'm writing it to him. I can see that, she said. It looks like you're working your way through the pain. What you wrote was interesting, though. I blushed, remembering that my entry included descriptions of my past relationship. Yeah, I was just recalling life with my ex. I was probably a little harsh there at the end of it. Connor, it's how you feel. And if it helps you move past it, then what's the harm? Wow, what a woman. Sabrina, you're just what the doctor ordered. I sat back down next to her, took the letter from her hand, laid it back on the coffee table, and kissed her passionately. I pulled my face away from her lips and looked at her. Are you upset that I removed your reading material? She smiled and said, Now, where were we? We spent the rest of the evening on the couch, sharing intimate moments. Leading up to our long weekend, we got together most nights or talked on the phone, learning so much about one another. On the Thursday before the holiday weekend, I got a call from Shayna. Dad, I'm calling to make another plea. Will you go to the wedding? I was getting a little perturbed, even though she was my daughter. Is your mother putting you up to this? I asked. No, Dad. To be honest, I think she would rather you didn't come. She doesn't want a scene. But Ron keeps pushing. Why would she think I would make a scene? I retorted. Because he has been your rival since you were in school, she explained. So then why do you want me to go so badly? Do you want me to make a scene? No, Dad. I want you to show Mom and Ron that you're the bigger man. I think it would be good for you, maybe force you to deal with it, and move on. My daughter wanted me to move on. I had already moved on. My relationship with Sabrina was at a point where we were exclusive and committed to each other. Honey, I'm fine. I've already moved on. Let the whole thing be. Let her have him. Yeah, that sounds like you've moved on. All right, she said sarcastically. Believe me, honey, I have. Sure, there is still resentment, and I wouldn't shed a tear if he disappeared tomorrow. But I have moved on. Sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to get you upset. I think I'd better let you go before I say something that hurts your feelings. Sorry, Dad. I'll talk to you next week. When Sabrina called later that night, she could tell something wasn't right. What's wrong? It's nothing. My daughter called and is bugging me to go to my ex's wedding. I don't know why she's pushing so hard for this, I said heatedly. Can we discuss this over the weekend when you've calmed down? She asked. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to take it out on you. It's okay, Connor. We'll work through this together. We talked for a while longer and made plans for me to pick her up in the morning. The next morning, when she came out of her condo, I was speechless. Sabrina was dressed in a yellow floral print sundress that really complemented her petite frame and olive complexion. She carried an overnight bag that couldn't have held more than a couple of outfits. I guess she didn't feel she needed too many clothes for the 3 days. She opened the door to my car, put her bag in the back, and sat down in the front seat. I apologize, I said. I would have gotten out and opened your door for you, but I don't think I could stand up without embarrassing myself. She grinned and said, You say the sweetest things. Wow, what a woman. I drove to the hotel on the beach, and we talked casually the whole way. Glancing at her sitting there, I couldn't shake the smile on my face. We got an early check-in at the hotel and went up to our room. It had an awesome view. As we stood there, she turned to me and said, Connor, we have a problem. I looked at her questioningly. She had a smile on her face, mixed signals to say the least. Then she said, I can't take you out in public with that bulge in your pants. Let's just say she found a creative way to resolve that problem. Once we were done, she said, problem solved. Now get up and get going. We got ready, and I was speechless as I followed her out the door, onto the elevator, and out to my car, grinning the whole way. Before I started the car, I looked over at her, leaned in, and kissed her. This wonderful woman treated me like a king, and I wanted to treat her like my queen. I was all in. I couldn't tell you what we ate. My eyes and mind were all on her. Connor, she said, interrupting my thoughts. I looked into her eyes. Yes. Can I make a suggestion without upsetting you? I thought for a second and replied, I can't promise not to get upset, but I'll try. Thank you, Connor. You know I care about you a lot. Oh, I thought to myself, what's next? Connor, I would like to go with you to your ex-wife's wedding. I want to meet your daughter, show off my man to all the other guests, and finally, I'd like to thank Jill for making you available for me. She said with a smirk on her face. To say I was stunned is an understatement. A huge smile filled my face. Oh my God, I thought. This would be perfect. I could definitely hold my head high with this woman on my arm. By the smile on your face, I take that as a yes, she said. You will make me the proudest man at the wedding, I replied. We might have to leave the reception early to put the spotlight back on the bride and groom. That night was amazing. We deepened our connection, and it was passionate and genuine. It had been a while for both of us, so we were both eager. I think I did well for a man of my age with limited experience. When you're with someone for a long time, you get into a routine that works for both of you. Starting anew with someone else can feel a bit awkward. I'm sure she felt the same way about my reactions. In my opinion, though, we did well. We soon learned to read each other and found our rhythm. In the morning, I woke up next to this wonderful woman, and she was a vision. Of course, she had bedhead. We had gotten a bit wild the night before. Still, she looked tremendous. I expected her to head straight to the bathroom to start the morning routine, but she didn't. She turned to me, ran her fingers through her hair, and then laid her head on my chest, giving me a hug in the process. It felt so good and natural. I just laid there and enjoyed it, then kissed the top of her head, and she snuggled even more. I finally got up to brush my teeth and relieve my bladder. As I walked out of the bathroom, I looked at her still lying on the bed. I wished I could take a picture, but I knew I wouldn't need one to remember that vision. I would remember it for the rest of my life. She noticed me standing there looking at her and pulled a pillow over her face. That's when I said something I don't think I ever said to my ex. Why would you hide such a stunning beauty behind a pillow? She rolled over and buried her face into the pile of pillows, her back fully exposed. There's a stunning beauty behind there, I said. She wiggled her hips, and then I heard a muffled laugh from under the pillows. I quickly got back on the bed and laid beside her, caressing her back. She pulled her head up and gave me a sweet kiss. I had brushed my teeth, but she hadn't yet. There was no horrible morning breath. We lay there for a little while enjoying each other's company. Nothing rushed, just sweet moments. When we finally got out of bed, it was after 10 o'clock. She went into the bathroom and closed the door. Do you want me to make a reservation for lunch? I called out. Lunch? She called back. I'm hungry for breakfast. Give me a few, and I'll be ready. I was shocked, to say the least. Jill would take an hour. 5 minutes later, she came out of the bathroom with her hair combed and just a touch of makeup on. She truly was a stunning beauty. She went to her clothes and picked out a few items, placing them on the bed. She bent down to put on her panties, and there was that stunning beauty again. That's a wonderful view, I said. She turned to me and said, I'm glad you like it. It's been with me all my life. I laughed. She was so quick with the right quip. We spent the day walking the beach, visiting shops, and enjoying local restaurants and each other's company. At dinner, we were sitting in a romantic Italian restaurant enjoying our meal and conversation when she got quiet, which caught my attention. She whispered, when we get back to the hotel, I want to try that wheelbarrow position you wrote about. My eyes got wide, and a huge smile came to my face. We can try anything you want, I replied, knowing I was probably in over my head. That night, we tried that position and many others. It was our night to experiment, and she encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone. We tried many things, with her sharing what she liked and wanted. I was eager to please her. By the end of the weekend, we were so comfortable with each other. emotionally and physically, that we didn't even bother watching the fireworks. We made our own. Our relationship hit a milestone. We both knew that this was real, and we were excited to experience life together. That week, my daughter called me again. "Dad, the wedding is in 15 days. I'm asking, no, begging, you to be the better man and say yes to going." I hemmed and hawed a little, making my daughter squirm on the other end of the line. Finally, I said, "Okay, but under one condition." "Great. What is it?" "I'll have a +1 that you are going to have to meet and accept because she will probably be your stepmom." "What?" "Yep, I believe I'm in love." "How long have you been dating?" "Only a little while, but we both care deeply for each other," I declared. "I can't wait to meet her," she said. "I knew you would find someone." The day of the wedding arrived, and I picked up Sabrina from her condo. She looked remarkable in a conservative yet stylish dress that accentuated her every curve and highlighted her natural beauty. With just a touch of makeup, her deep brown eyes stood out beautifully. It was hard not to look at them. I drove to the church, and we decided to sit toward the back. After all, I didn't want to upstage the bride on her special day. 3 days before, I had mailed out the letter to Ron. It had been therapeutic for me to write it down. And while I probably shouldn't have sent it, he was my rival after all. As we sat in the pew, I noticed Ron looking around for me. Our eyes met, and he headed toward us, probably to gloat. When he saw my date, he nearly stumbled. Sabrina was so extraordinary that he knew the best man had competition. As he stood up front, ready to take the plunge, he had a look on his face that said, "Am I making a mistake?" That feeling of his didn't take long to materialize. Initially, I had heard bits and pieces about their relationship through mutual acquaintances. Part of me wondered if Jill would be different with Ron, but I knew that her behavior wouldn't change so easily. A few months into their marriage, I started hearing rumors about their constant fighting. It seemed the same patterns that had plagued our relationship were now present in theirs, only worse. Jill was actually dominating him, both verbally and emotionally. Ron, who had once seemed so confident, began to look worn down and defeated. Then one day, I got a call from my daughter. "Did you hear about Mom and Ron?" she asked. I sighed, expecting more news about their marital troubles. "What now?" "I had to get Mom bailed out yesterday. She put Ron in the hospital." "What?" I asked, shocked. They were having one of their daily arguments, and a neighbor called the cops. When they arrived, they found Ron on the floor, and Mom was sitting on his chest yelling at him. Ron needed several stitches to close a wound on his head. "As for the cops?" I asked. "Mom hit him on the head with a wine bottle," Shayna said. I was taken aback, a mix of shock and an unsettling sense of déjà vu washing over me. I couldn't help but laugh. At least I didn't get hurt. Is he still going to enjoy his victory over me, or is he going to divorce your mother? "Yeah, he already filed for divorce," Shayna replied. I guess the day-to-day grind hit, and the bloom was off the rose. He must have looked and saw 30 years of living with this woman and decided it wasn't what he thought it would be. He didn't even make it a year with her. That next year, Shayna got married, and I had the honor of walking her down the aisle as a proud father. Jill was there, of course, but not Ron. They were still in the process of divorcing. Jill spent a few days in jail, but Ron was kind enough not to file charges against her if she agreed to the divorce terms. Jill would not be receiving any financial support from this marriage either. I met Jill for lunch at my daughter's place. Sabrina was running late and hadn't arrived yet. Meanwhile, Jill walked up to me looking worse for wear. "Hey, Connor, can I talk to you for a second?" she asked. Before I could respond, she continued, "I made a mistake, giving up a quarter-century of love and care for a pipe dream. Ron just kept finding faults with everything I did. Nothing was right or good enough for him. He even made me get surgery to try to change myself. It seemed like he was never happy. Connor, I'm sorry. Is there any way I could make it up to you? and we could start over. I looked at Jill and said, "So finally someone found faults in the holy earth. That's called karma. Ever since you left me, I've had a wonderful life. No nagging, no criticism, and no arguments. Do you really think I would give up my peace of mind to get back with you? Hell no." I started to walk away just as Sabrina arrived. I held her hand and introduced her. "This is Sabrina, my fiancée. We're getting married next month." After that, we all had lunch and Jill didn't say another word. A month later, I got married. No, I didn't send Jill an invitation. I no longer felt the need to be vindictive. Did I feel sorry for her? No. She made her bed, and she had to lie in it. Just because I had a hand in that bed doesn't mean she didn't deserve it. Sabrina and I are now building our life together. She's brought so much happiness into my life that I can't even imagine how I put up with Jill for so long. Sometimes the best thing you can do is let go of what's weighing you down and embrace the new possibilities life has to offer. Sabrina taught me that, and for that, I'll always be grateful.